All right, so through my favorite thing ever now that I can't run mountains and deal with my emotions properly, in my opinion, and I audibly process, sometimes angrily, everything that I'm feeling and thinking, but it is incredibly helpful. And I assume it will prevent moments in the future when what I say doesn't match how I'm meaning it, which has been a huge source of issues in my life because sometimes the way things come out, people don't really take the right way. And instead of asking for clarity, they just assume something. And I feel like this is going to be helpful in the future if I ever make contact with human beings again, more than just like the grocery store and the laundromat. Little joke there. So, basically, to sum all of this up, I know this was really hard for people to grasp and understand, but I just want to say that this is a time period of great change, right? And this is a time period where we have people entering into our country who are seeking refuge. They have been for a few years now, right? From the Middle East. We know that Islamophobia exists in the United States. We know this, okay? Now, without offending anybody, but just to tell you the shortened version without giving names or harming anybody or anything like that, offending anybody, I had a relationship with a Muslim man in India where I thought we were in love, which is the only reason I had the relationship because I had waited years to be in a relationship and I only wanted like a real thing. We really meshed well. It was really comfortable to be around him like I had known him for a long time. It felt right, and I was willing to take the chance on love because I perceived it as real love. We were together for 6 weeks, and it turned out it wasn't real love. It was for me. I genuinely cared about him, and I can't really speak on how it was for him. But when this happened to me and I was terrified, I did feel his presence around me. Whether that's a figment of my imagination or not, I don't care. It helped me feel safe. Now, when we were together, he told me he could never come to my country because of his last name, because his last name was the same last name of a man that was allegedly involved with the 9/11 attacks. Now, I just want to say that, of course, that was a horrific tragedy, and that day I recall very well. I was 15 years old and in high school. But it's no mystery that there's a lot surrounding all of the events and the wars that happen in the Middle East that we're pretty aware of at this point, and that we no longer can pretend is one-sided. And we no longer can make Islam or Muslims the enemy. There are extremists in every religion, in every country. There are American extremists here. Um, there's extremists everywhere. So he told me he could never come here because his last name would essentially get him targeted and disappeared. And if you have ever interacted with Muslim people or communicated with them, then you would know that that is true. And it's not because everybody in the government is corrupt or bad. It's because some of them are. Some of them are, which we also know to be true because there are good and bad people in every profession. Every profession, every country, every religion, good and bad people. It's the way our world works, right? Now, the doctors did not take this seriously to begin with because I was an ambulatory spinal cord injury and I was a miracle walking, and they were involved with my ex-abuser, right? So they were listening to him instead of to me and not taking it seriously. During this time period, I did reach out to this man because I did want to know if he was around me. I had no clue what his life or circumstances were like, and I in no way wanted to harm his life. I was in a very Sufi soul place. I was singing to the shadow and light, and I was feeling really, really connected to Sufism, which I did not realize. I still don't actually know if he is a Sufi or if he is just Muslim or if that is the same, or I think it's different. I'm unclear, right? So it doesn't matter. I wanted to know, were you around me? And then we spoke on the phone January 3rd. It was completely appropriate, just so that there's no conflict or complication with that. We did not discuss anything inappropriate at all, but we spoke on the phone. And after that is when helicopters and sniper rifles began following me around on a regular basis. Now, unfortunately for me, June 12th of 2020 is when I had a lumbar MRI and a thoracic x-ray for my T7-8 spine hit, because the doctor said there's no way for there to be right side body numbness caused by a thoracic spine hit. But there is. It's thoracolumbar radiculopathy, which I was diagnosed with in the ER August of 2020. And then again, with the record that got deleted of the reminiscent Brown-Séquard syndrome. Right side body numbness with a hit on one side of the spine is actually Brown-Séquard. It's possible. But they finally gave me this MRI March 5th of 2021. Now, this had already happened with the helicopters following me around and the sniper rifles following me around. And then this MRI happened, and I know that it picked something up. So I started to speak out and be like, hey, I need you to listen to me here. I'm being medically tortured just because I spoke on the phone to this man who's from Saudi Arabia, who has a last name that is one of the last names. It's his tribal last name. So there are more than thousands of people with this last name. That would be like me being targeted. And I have a common last name. The vice president has the same last name as me, you know? And this is something that I was trying to bring to people's attention here, because you have to understand that you are welcoming refugees in who do not have identification or passports. And while there are some wonderful government officials, there are also some not so wonderful ones who are Islamophobic and are extremists and are not good people. And they're not going to do honorable things. There's different branches of our government, as they know, it's not a secret anymore, that target people because they are Muslims. It is our job to literally make sure that we keep people safe if we're going to welcome them here, and to also make sure that they are aware of things. I watched a video where a man wants to surprise somebody by like giving the nicest person $1,000, right? And it's a common video, and he speaks to a man who's Muslim, who is in a country, and he's saying how he eats his lunch alone and he doesn't have friends and all of these things. And my immediate thought is, don't put that on the internet, because what if somebody targets him now? You cannot put people's lives at risk. What if somebody comes here and they speak to somebody on the phone with the same last name as somebody affiliated with that, and somebody in the government wrongfully targets them and disappears them? You have to listen to this. This is not a joke. There are a lot of people who know what I'm saying is real. It's not a joke. It's a very real thing. And how dare you act like it's going to be a safe place for refugees without educating them? How dare you? I literally grew up here. I've lived here my whole entire life. And I have been saying this. And people here have acted like I'm crazy, not listened, and not cared. So imagine if it's somebody from away, from the Middle East or from another country, who has a last name or speaks to a family member with a last name that this country decides to target, wrongfully, I might add. This country is not the only country guilty of doing it, so you don't have to get offended. There are many other countries that do it as well. But still, what would have happened if that person was by themselves, isolated, alone, injured, and they needed help, and they're crying out for help and no one's listening because they don't care or want to hear it? This is why I spoke so much about it. Not to mess up anybody's life, not to come between anything, not to ruin your idea of perfect America. I haven't lived that, so I don't know what that looks like. But I am grateful for what I have been able to have in my life, which is why I seem so happy all the time. Even though now that I'm speaking out about all the abuse that I've gone through, you might think to yourself, but she always seems so happy. That was a choice. Now that I don't have an able body, I am less likely to be happy. I'm pretty grumpy and angry, but I cannot be silent. I refuse. He told me he couldn't come here. It's true. We all know this. This is something that really needs to be paid attention to so that we can actually have change. Do you know what they do? They fly helicopters over people's head, they disappear them, and then they say that they were an extremist, and everybody just goes, oh yeah, that's probably true. Cool. And what happens to that person? Do you think that they have a family? Do you think that they wanted a family? Do you think that they had dreams? I mean, come on. This is what I'm talking about. This is why I'm being so annoying to all of you about it. And what did most of you do but blame it on algorithms and keep me silenced instead of actually acknowledging this? While we simultaneously allow people to come into this country to seek refuge, in which they're putting themselves in danger because people are not going to understand these things, not going to understand a lot of things. You know, I had a woman who posted, she's trying to find books for some of these young women to read, but they are conservative, truly conservative. They have a different life. They're raised in a different way. You know, and I thought to myself, I don't think I have one book in my apartment that would be appropriate. Maybe the Bhagavad Gita. I have a Quran, but it's an English translation and I've written all over it. You know, like, this is something that you have to be aware of. I mean, I need to learn so much more. I know very little, but I do know that what I'm saying is true. And yes, I'm aware of the fact that they rerouted the air station overhead, because that was something that somebody said to me. Well, they've rerouted it. But I'm also aware of the directions, right? That's a nice little thing about me. I know where east, west, south, and north are. They rerouted the air station this direction. This is northeast. This is southwest. That's where they redirected the air station. These helicopters, when they flew over my head, were 3 at a time, and they flew from west to east. One of the times I was on my rooftop because it hurts to go downstairs looking at the stars, and 3 of them flew overhead, maybe 25 feet above me. I noticed that. Multiple times when I was in here, they flew overhead. One is recorded while I'm making a video in November of 2022. Yes, even that late they were doing it. I spoke to this man at the beginning of January 2021. One day, I stood outside of my driveway with a stick, my walking stick, and I glared out at the town because I could not understand why you weren't listening to me or caring, even though I was struggling, dying from autonomic dysreflexia, and yes, being medically tortured. Even though nobody wants to acknowledge that as being the truth. And probably when I try to post it, although now that I say this, they will make sure I can post it so that they can be like, oh, see, she's crazy, because that's been the major tactic of everybody. It's like I left an abusive relationship to enter into a larger scaled abusive relationship where everybody just did exactly what he did to me. Like, I don't even understand this. When you go through my medical records, you go through what I'm saying, you go through the evidence, everything that I'm saying makes perfect sense. And yet, 2 years, 10 months, and a day later, this day that I'm standing out in the driveway, a helicopter and a sniper rifle flew overhead. They looped around, and then they flew off in that direction. They flew from west, coming back towards like this way, right? So we've got northwest that they looped it back to, west, northwest, this direction. Oh, now they're going this way. This way is southwest right here, yeah? So southwest, and then they're coming back this way towards east, right? Flew away. Evidently they decided, thankfully, that me and my stick weren't as much of a threat as they initially thought, right? One day I threw a pine cone into the sea because I wanted to wake up my sea family, because I was like, somebody help me. Star family, sea family, the human beings aren't listening. Anybody else? I threw a pine cone in the sea and there was a sniper across the beach from me. That startled me a bit. I probably looked like a deer in headlights. These are all things that evidently are going to just be glossed over like it never happened, but I'm going to keep talking about it. And I'm going to keep bringing attention to it, because this will hopefully keep somebody safe in the future. And maybe you will think here, maybe you will use your head here And you will think to yourself, if there is somebody here who is saying that they need help or that they're being followed by helicopters and sniper rifles or something, that you actually pay attention because you say, oh yeah, that lady that was dying, that we gaslit and made seem crazy, was saying the same thing. Maybe I'll listen this time. But until then, you won't break my soul. 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 I'm telling everybody.